Officer Carla Mendez is no stranger to tough situations. Her uniform commands respect, her gaze shows no weakness, and she's made a career out of maintaining order in a chaotic world. But on one scorching afternoon at the Central Market, her life changes forever. Carla publicly humiliates a man who appears to be nothing more than an unassuming shopper, until she learns he's Benjamin Clark, a renowned judge with the power to unravel her entire world. Summoned to court and facing Benjamin as her judge, Carla's carefully constructed life begins to fracture. Haunted by the ghosts of her past and the trauma of growing up in a violent neighborhood, she's forced to confront the lines she has crossed and the prejudices she never acknowledged. As she struggles to find redemption in a community that mistrusts her, Carla discovers a shocking link between her family's legacy and Benjamin's own story of survival. In a city where power and prejudice collide, Echoes of Reckoning explores whether redemption is possible when the past and present are so tightly intertwined, and whether the most broken souls can find a way to heal. The Central Market bustled with energy, shoppers navigating narrow aisles filled with vibrant produce and aromatic spices. Officer Carla Mendez scanned the crowd, her green eyes narrowing as she zeroed in on a tall, composed man inspecting a pile of apples. Her hardened instincts, honed over years of patrolling, flared. "Hey, you," Carla called, her voice cutting through the market's noise. The man, Benjamin Clark, looked up, calm and unflinching. "Yes, officer?" His voice was measured, respectful. "What are you doing here?" Carla demanded, stepping forward. Benjamin's brow furrowed slightly. "Buying apples. Is that a crime?" The crowd began to gather, whispers of discomfort floating in the air. Carla's voice rose. "We've had reports of disturbances. People like you need to keep moving." Benjamin held her gaze. "People like me?" he echoed, his tone steady but with an edge that hinted at deeper understanding. Carla's authority wavered as she felt the weight of the onlooker's silent judgment, but she masked it with a sneer. "Move along," she ordered, her voice faltering slightly. Benjamin picked up his bag of apples and walked away, his dignity intact. Carla watched him go, a strange discomfort settling in her chest. Back at the station, Carla sat at her desk, her hands still tense from the encounter. The laughter of her colleagues echoed around her, masking her unease. "Rough day at the market?" one officer joked, leaning against her desk. Carla forced a smile. "Just keeping the peace," she replied. Her partner, Ricardo, gave her a knowing look. "You don't look like someone who just kept the peace." Carla's smile faded. It was nothing, but it wasn't nothing. The image of Benjamin's calm, unwavering eyes lingered in her mind, unsettling her. That night, she lay awake, haunted by memories of her father's lectures on integrity and the violence she had seen growing up. Carla turned restlessly, brushing off the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The next morning, Carla was called into her superior's office. Expecting a routine meeting, she walked in confidently. Her superior, Captain Hughes, looked grim. "Sit down, Mendez," Hughes said, sliding a thick envelope across the desk. Carla's heart sank. She opened it, her eyes widening at the words, "Court summons." Her stomach twisted as she read further. Benjamin Clark was a judge, a renowned judge, and he was pressing charges against her for abuse of power and racial profiling. "This is serious," Hughes said, his voice heavy. "We're looking at a full investigation, and your career is on the line." Carla swallowed, her bravado slipping. "It was a misunderstanding," she protested weakly. Hughes shook his head. "Tell that to the court. And good luck with Clark. He's known for not letting things slide." Carla left the office, fear gnawing at her, the weight of her actions pressing heavily on her chest. Desperate for solace, Carla drove to her childhood neighborhood. The streets were both familiar and haunting, each corner holding a memory of violence or resilience. She parked and walked aimlessly, hoping for clarity but finding only ghosts of her past. "Carla," a voice called. She turned to see Marco, an old friend from the neighborhood. His eyes were weary but kind. "Back to relive the glory days?" Marco joked, but there was a bitterness to it. Carla forced a smile. "Just visiting." Marco's expression darkened. "You know, some of us never got out. We're still fighting." His words stung, and Carla felt the weight of her past choices. She had become a protector, but had she lost her way? As she drove back, the streets felt less like home and more like a reminder of everything she tried to escape and everything she had become. The courthouse loomed over Carla, its gray stone facade imposing and cold. She took a shaky breath, feeling exposed and vulnerable. Inside, the marble floors echoed her footsteps as she entered the courtroom. Benjamin Clark sat at the judge's bench, his calm presence somehow more intimidating than any criminal she had faced. Their eyes met, and Carla's heart raced. She had never felt so small. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Carla stood, feeling the judgment of everyone in the room pressing down on her. This was only the beginning of a reckoning she hadn't anticipated, and the trials, both in court and within her soul, were just beginning. The courtroom was tense, every eye fixed on Carla as she took the stand. The prosecutor's voice rang out, sharp and unforgiving. "Officer Mendez, on the day in question, you confronted a man you suspected of causing a disturbance. Tell me, what did this disturbance look like?" Carla clenched her hands in her lap. There had been reports of suspicious behavior in the area. "I was acting on instinct." The prosecutor arched an eyebrow. "Instinct?" He gestured toward Benjamin, who sat watching, calm and inscrutable. This man was simply buying fruit. "Do you believe your instinct justified publicly humiliating him?" Carla swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the courtroom's gaze. Witnesses were called, each testimony chipping away at her defenses. As Benjamin listened, his expression remained impassive, but his eyes seemed to pierce right through her. By the end of the hearing, Carla felt small, exposed, and very, very vulnerable. Back at her apartment, Carla paced restlessly, her mind replaying the hearing. She stopped in front of a dusty mirror, staring at her own reflection. "How did you get here?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Memories of her father flooded back. A strong, proud man who believed in protecting their neighborhood, not dominating it. Tears stung her eyes. "I'm not like them," she said, as if trying to convince herself. But deep down, she knew she had crossed lines her father would have condemned. The guilt gnawed at her, each memory a sharp reminder of how far she had strayed from her original purpose. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Justice, Carla. Always justice." The mirror offered no answers, only a reflection of a woman who barely recognized herself. The next morning, Carla sought refuge in a local cafe, craving a moment of calm. She nursed a cup of coffee when a familiar voice jolted her out of her reverie. "Officer Mendez." Carla turned to see Ana Morales, the community center coordinator, glaring at her. Anna's presence was like a physical blow. "You've got a lot of nerve showing your face around here," Ana said coldly, crossing her arms. Carla tried to keep her composure. "Anna, No. Don't you dare apologize," Ana snapped. "Do you have any idea the damage you've done? The trust you've shattered?" The confrontation drew a few curious glances, but Carla was frozen in place. Anna's words sliced through her defenses, leaving her raw and exposed. Carla watched as Ana stormed out, her anger leaving an indelible mark. Carla was left sitting there, feeling the weight of the community's pain pressing heavily on her. Later that day, Carla was summoned back to the station. Captain Hughes eyed her with a mix of disappointment and frustration. "You're a liability, Mendez," Hughes said bluntly. "I've got two options. Suspend you immediately or give you one last chance." He leaned forward. "A leave of absence and mandatory community service to rebuild trust." Carla stiffened. "Community service?" she echoed, her pride stinging. "Yes," Hughes said, his tone firm. "Enroll in the program or pack up your things." Carla's mouth went dry. She hated the thought of being humbled this way, but the alternative was unthinkable. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I'll do it." Hughes watched her, searching for sincerity. "Good. Sign up today. And for what it's worth, I hope you make this right." As Carla left his office, she realized just how far she had fallen, and how difficult the path to redemption would be. Carla's first day at the community center was nothing short of humiliating. Ana greeted her with a frosty stare. You're here to serve, not to police, she said, handing Carla a mop. Start with the floors. Carla bit back her pride and got to work. Every step felt heavy, every glance from the volunteers a reminder of her disgrace. A young mother named Maria, who was stacking supplies, glared at her. Funny, isn't it? Maria said. The mighty officer brought down to clean floors. Carla didn't reply. Instead, she focused on her task, each motion a small act of contrition. As she scrubbed, she felt the eyes of the community judging her, their pain a mirror to her own. By the end of the day, Carla was exhausted, physically and emotionally. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, a flicker of determination burned. If she was ever going to make amends, she knew she had to start from the ground up. Carla moved quietly through the community center, the weight of judgment pressing on her. Every step felt like walking on eggshells, and whispers followed her everywhere. Maria, a young mother with tired eyes and a sharp tongue, crossed her path, her voice cutting through the tension. So, Officer Mendez, cleaning floors doesn't feel quite as powerful as flashing a badge, does it? Maria's sarcasm was sharp. Carla set down the mop, her hands trembling. I'm here to help, she replied, but even she could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Help? Maria scoffed. You helped yourself to our dignity, remember? Carla's mouth opened to respond, but she closed it, realizing she had no defense. As Maria stormed away, Carla was left feeling more alienated than ever. Yet, for the first time, she began to truly understand the depth of the community's wounds. Later, Carla was organizing donations when she witnessed a simple, beautiful moment. Two children, giggling as they sorted through old toys, stopped to share a single stuffed bear. You can have it, the older one said, pressing the bear into his friend's arms. Carla's breath caught. The purity of their generosity struck her, and she felt something shift inside her. A small crack in the armor she had built around her heart. Miss, are you okay? One of the kids asked, his eyes wide with concern. Carla smiled, a real, unguarded smile. Yeah, she whispered. I think I will be. For the first time in a long while, she saw the humanity she had overlooked in her years on the force, and it sparked a flicker of hope she couldn't ignore. As she finished her tasks for the day, Carla was surprised to see Ricardo, her longtime friend and fellow officer, standing in the doorway of the community center. Ricardo, she said, her voice tinged with both relief and apprehension. He approached, his face a mixture of concern and disbelief. I had to see it to believe it. Officer Mendez, mopping floors. Carla rolled her eyes, but couldn't help the smile that followed. You came all the way here to mock me? Ricardo's expression softened. I came to check on you. Are you okay? Carla hesitated, the truth tangled in her throat. I don't know. This place. It's changing me, and I'm not sure I like what it's revealing. Ricardo nodded. Change isn't easy, Carla, but maybe it's necessary. His words lingered in her mind long after he left, planting seeds of doubt and determination that left her feeling torn yet resolute. One evening, Carla found herself working late, sorting supplies alongside Samuel, an older volunteer with kind eyes and a quiet presence. You look lost, Samuel observed, not unkindly. Carla sighed, her shoulders slumping. Maybe I am. Samuel put down the box he was holding. People like us, we come here to find something, he said. A sense of purpose, a chance to make things right. Carla frowned. You think I can make things right? Samuel gave her a long look. That depends. Are you here to change, or just to look like you're changing? His words were gentle but cut deep, forcing Carla to confront her intentions. She found herself wanting to prove to him, and herself, that she was capable of true change. It was a realization that felt both frightening and freeing. As Carla walked home that night, the air cool and heavy, she witnessed a minor altercation on the street. Two teenagers were arguing, voices escalating. Her instincts screamed at her to intervene, but she hesitated, unsure of her role. Hey! One of the boys shouted at the other, shoving him hard. Carla took a step forward, but then froze. Was she still a protector, or had she become something else entirely? A neighbor stepped in, calming the boys with gentle words, and Carla watched from the shadows, feeling both relieved and conflicted. The moment forced her to question her identity. Was she still the officer who took control, or was she now a part of this community, learning to heal from within? As she continued home, the weight of her internal struggle pressed down harder than ever. Carla approached Maria hesitantly. "Need an extra hand?" she offered, gesturing to the boxes of canned goods Maria was sorting for the food drive. Maria's eyes narrowed, but she sighed. "Fine. Just don't mess it up," Maria said curtly. Carla worked silently, following Maria's lead. After a while, Maria softened a bit. "You know, this place runs on trust," she muttered. "I'm trying to earn it," Carla replied, her voice sincere. For the first time, Maria looked at her, seeing not a badge but a person. The moment was fleeting, but it was enough. Carla felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she was starting to make a difference. As the food drive ended, a few people even nodded at her, and Carla couldn't help but feel the faintest sense of belonging. Just as progress seemed possible, a heated argument erupted between two young men near the community center entrance. Carla rushed forward to help de-escalate, but her uniformed past made things worse. "Stay out of it, cop," one of them yelled, eyes blazing with distrust. Carla put her hands up defensively. "I'm just trying to help," she said, but her presence only seemed to fuel the tension. Anna quickly intervened, her voice commanding but kind, and diffused the situation. As the crowd dispersed, Anna turned to Carla, frustration evident in her eyes. "Sometimes, your best intentions only reopen old wounds," she said. Carla's heart sank, feeling that her past mistakes might forever overshadow her present efforts. She left that day questioning whether she could ever truly be part of this community. The next morning, Benjamin Clark walked into the community center, his presence quiet yet commanding. Carla felt her pulse quicken as he approached. "Judge Clark," she greeted, her voice steady despite her nerves. Benjamin's eyes were contemplative. "I've been observing your work," he said. "Are you learning anything?" Carla swallowed, unsure how to respond. "I'm trying," she admitted, "but I still have a lot to figure out." Benjamin nodded, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes, growth isn't about immediate results. It's about the journey." His words hung in the air, both a judgment and an opportunity. As he walked away, Carla felt an odd mixture of dread and hope. His visit had pushed her to dig deeper, and she realized she wasn't just here to serve a sentence. She was here to learn. Overwhelmed by guilt and confusion, Carla drove to her father's grave that evening. The cemetery was quiet, the air heavy with memories. She knelt, her voice cracking. "I'm lost, Dad," she confessed, tears streaming down her face. "I became a cop to protect people, to honor your legacy. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started." Her grief spilled out, a torrent of regret and longing. She remembered her father's unwavering sense of justice, the way he'd fight for what was right. "Did I betray everything you stood for?" she whispered. The visit left her raw, but a spark of determination ignited within her. She couldn't undo her mistakes, but she could choose to be better, to honor her father's memory by truly understanding what it meant to protect and serve. The next day, Carla returned to the community center, her resolve stronger than ever. She volunteered for the toughest tasks, cleaning the playground, helping elderly residents, listening, really listening, to the stories of those around her. Anna observed from a distance, her expression wary but softened. "You seem different today," Anna said as they crossed paths. Carla met her gaze. "I'm here to do the work, no matter how long it takes." Anna studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "We'll see." It wasn't acceptance, but it was something. As Carla scrubbed graffiti from a wall, she felt a new sense of purpose. For the first time, she believed she might be on the right path, not just for the community, but for herself. Carla stood in front of the gathered crowd at the community center, her hands gripping the edges of a wooden podium. The air buzzed with skepticism and curiosity. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "This event is about building trust, about creating a bridge between law enforcement and the community." Davi, a teenage boy with bright eyes, approached her afterward. "I want to be a police officer one day," he said, his voice hopeful. Carla's heart clenched. Why? She asked, genuinely curious. Because I want to make things better. Be someone people can trust. Davi's words struck a chord, and Carla saw her younger self in him, full of hope and belief in change. The connection felt like a fragile thread tying her to a part of her past she had forgotten. As the event progressed, barriers slowly began to break down, but the work had only just begun. After the event, Carla helped Samuel clean up the chairs and tables. You know, Samuel said, his voice low, Benjamin Clark isn't just any judge. Carla looked at him, puzzled. What do you mean? Samuel paused, then continued, years ago. He was saved from a life of crime by a compassionate police officer who believed in him. Carla's breath caught as Samuel added, that officer was your father. Carla's world spun. My father, she whispered. Her father, whose memory she had tried to honor but felt she had betrayed, had saved Benjamin's life. The connection stunned her, weaving a thread of fate between her and Benjamin. The revelation left her reeling, and she knew she had to confront Benjamin, not just for herself, but to understand the legacy her father had left behind. Carla found Benjamin in his chambers the next day. He looked up from his paperwork, his expression unreadable. Judge Clark, she began, her voice wavering. I just learned about my father and how he helped you. Benjamin leaned back, his eyes softening. Yes, Carla, I knew who you were from the beginning. Tears burned at the corners of her eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to confront your actions on your own, Benjamin replied. Your father inspired me to seek justice, but I couldn't intervene in your journey. You had to find your way. Their conversation was charged with emotion, but carried a newfound understanding. Benjamin's calm exterior broke, and he offered Carla something she never expected. A path toward reconciliation and forgiveness, for both their intertwined pasts and the people they had become. Carla returned to the community center, determined and filled with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She approached Anna and Maria. I want to start a mentorship program for local youth, she proposed, inspired by her father and Benjamin. Anna crossed her arms, studying Carla. And why should we trust you with that? Because I've learned, Carla said, her voice firm. And because I owe this community everything. Maria finally stepped forward, her gaze softened. You've worked hard, Carla. Maybe you deserve this chance. The acceptance was cautious but real. Carla set to work, organizing activities and listening to the dreams and fears of the youth she had once ignored. The community's attitude toward her began to shift, and Maria's eventual smile felt like the beginning of something genuine. One night, chaos erupted in the neighborhood, a fire blazing in an old apartment building. Carla didn't think twice. She sprinted toward the flames, her training taking over. She coordinated efforts, ensuring families got out safely. Her bravery shone, not from a place of authority but of genuine care. As the fire was extinguished and families reunited, people looked at Carla differently, with newfound respect. Anna approached her, eyes filled with gratitude. You saved lives tonight. Carla, covered in soot, gave a weary smile. It's what my father would have done. The chapter ended with Carla realizing that her purpose lay not in enforcing power, but in serving with empathy. For the first time, she felt at peace with who she was becoming, and the community saw her as more than just a cop. They saw her as one of their own. The morning after the fire, the community center was a hive of activity. People gathered to help, offering food, clothes, and support to those affected. Carla moved among them, organizing supplies, feeling a connection she never thought possible. Anna approached her, exhaustion and relief mingling in her eyes. You did good yesterday, she said quietly. Carla paused, meeting Anna's gaze. Thank you. I finally feel like I'm where I belong. Anna's expression softened. We're stronger together. You've shown that. They shared a moment of mutual respect, the animosity between them finally melting away. Carla's heart swelled with a sense of purpose, the community's trust now something she had genuinely earned. She knew her work was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. That afternoon, Carla stood in the precinct, her badge and uniform in hand. Ricardo waited for her, his face a mix of pride and sadness. "You really doing this?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. Carla nodded. "I am. I need to do more than just enforce the law. I need to change how I serve." Ricardo pulled her into a tight hug. "We're going to miss you, Mendez." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "I'll miss you too. But it's time." Handing over her badge felt like letting go of an old life, one that had both shaped and broken her. As she left the station for the last time, a weight lifted from her shoulders, replaced by the anticipation of the new path she had chosen. Carla arrived at Benjamin Clark's chambers, feeling a mixture of gratitude and nervousness. He greeted her with a rare, warm smile. "Judge Clark," she began, "thank you. Not just for holding me accountable, but for everything." Benjamin's eyes were kind. "You've come a long way, Carla. Your father would be proud." Her throat tightened at the mention of her father. "I hope so. I've learned that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about healing." Benjamin nodded, his voice gentle. "And that's why you'll keep making a difference. This city needs more people who understand that." They shared a handshake that felt like a new beginning, one marked by understanding and respect. Carla left his chambers with a sense of closure, her heart full of hope. Carla visited her father's grave, kneeling to place fresh flowers on the well-worn earth. The sky above was a soft blue, and the wind whispered through the trees. "Hey, Dad," she said, her voice breaking. "I've finally figured it out. I'm going to keep fighting for what you believed in, but in my own way." She traced her fingers over his name, feeling the pain and the pride intertwined. A tear rolled down her cheek, but it wasn't one of sorrow. It was of peace. She rose, standing taller than she had in years. Her father's legacy was no longer a burden, but a source of strength. With one last look, she whispered, "Thank you," and walked away, ready to honor his memory through action and compassion. The sun cast a golden glow over the community center as Carla stood watching Davi and the other children play. Laughter and joy filled the air, and for the first time, Carla felt she truly belonged. Maria joined her, nudging Carla playfully. "You're going to have to get used to this. Being a hero without the badge." Carla laughed, feeling the warmth of friendship. "I think I can handle that." The echoes of her past were still there, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they had guided her to a future filled with purpose, empathy, and a deep understanding of what it truly meant to serve and protect. Her journey had come full circle, and she was ready for whatever came next.